The Boulevard Cafe in downtown Nashville was buzzing with life on a sweltering summer afternoon. The clink of cups, bursts of laughter, and the steady hum of conversation filled every corner. It was a kind of place where everyone seemed connected to someone else. Friends, families, colleagues gathered in little islands of chatter. And yet, in the corner by the tall window where sunlight spilled like liquid gold across the table, sat a young woman who was entirely alone. Her name was Tessa Carraway, the daughter of millionaire real estate mogul Grayson Carraway, though no one glancing at her would have guessed her wealth mattered today. In front of her rested a perfectly plated slice of chocolate cake, topped with a single candle. The candle was unlit, the cake untouched. Her lips moved faintly, her hands tracing movements in the air, delicate, precise, aching. Happy birthday to me. The signs were fluent, practiced, but there was no one across from her to respond. She was a silent conversation in a crowded cafe, invisible in plain sight. 23 years old today, and yet celebrating as if no one in the world had remembered. People noticed her, but not in the way she needed. A passing acquaintance clapped her on the shoulder, exaggerating his mouth movements, as if shouting without sound would make his words clearer. A woman dripping in jewelry leaned close, patted her hand, and walked away, satisfied with a gesture of polite acknowledgement. But no one stayed. No one spoke her language. Tessa smiled at each interruption, but they were hollow smiles, polished practice, the kind that never reach her eyes. And when they left, her hands resumed their conversation with the air, as though to remind herself she still existed. Across the room, at a table he hadn't even wanted to sit at, Logan Hayes watched it all unfold. Logan was a single father, a freelance designer, and today a reluctant client meeting victim. He had promised his 8-year-old son, Asher, that they'd go to the park, but instead they were stuck waiting in this overpriced cafe where even a latte carried the kind of price tag that made him wince. That's when he noticed the girl by the window. The dress, the pearls, the perfectly styled hair, all of it screamed wealth. But her hands told another story. Logan's chest tightened. He knew those movements, the flicker of fingers shaping meaning, sign language, and the word she signed, happy birthday to me. It hit him like a punch. He recognized it instantly, not just because he knew the language, but because he knew the feeling, the resignation in her gestures, the slump of her shoulders. This wasn't celebration. This was surrender. For a moment, he almost signed out loud, his own hands twitching automatically with the name Oliver, his younger brother, gone 5 years now. Logan had been a protector, his translator, his bridge to the hearing world. Even after Oliver's death, sometimes his hands still moved before his brain could stop them. He tried to focus on his phone, on the client he was supposed to meet, but every time he looked up, his eyes returned to her. This girl signing into silence, her cake untouched, her loneliness louder than all the cafe's chatter combined. Logan stood before he realized he had made a choice. He approached slowly, careful not to startle her, and when he was close enough, he signed, "Excuse me." Her hands froze mid-motion. Her wide blue eyes lifted, scanning his face like she was trying to solve a puzzle. "I don't mean to intrude." He signed again, "But happy birthday." The change was immediate. The mask she'd worn all afternoon cracked, revealing something raw and desperate beneath. Her hands trembled as she replied, "You'd sign?" "My brother was deaf," Logan answered, then winced at his own wording. Was past tense, a truth that still ached, but she didn't linger on it. Her movements became urgent, almost frantic. She pulled out the chair across from her. "Please, sit, please." Logan glanced at his phone. His client would arrive any minute. But then he looked at her again. Her eyes filled with something like hope, like someone drowning who just spotted a rope. He sat. "I'm Logan," he signed. "Tessa," she replied. And then the words came tumbling from her hands like water breaking through a dam. She hadn't signed with anyone in months. She admitted. Maybe 3, maybe 4. Her father, Grayson Carraway, the great businessman, never learned. He sent expensive gifts instead, dresses, earrings, condos, vacations. Things that glittered but didn't speak her language. She gestured at her $3,000 dress with a bitter smile. I'd trade all of this for one birthday wish from him in sign language. Just once. Logan's chest ached. His phone buzzed again, his client calling. He silenced it without looking. "Since when have you been deaf?" he asked. "Since 4, she replied. "Meningitis." My father's solution? Best doctors, best schools, best hearing aids. Everything but learning to actually talk to me. That must be lonely. You have no idea. She paused, then studied him. Or maybe you do. You said your brother was deaf. Logan hesitated, then told her about Oliver, about how he had been 16 years younger, how Logan had practically raised him, how their secret language had been their world, and how one day a drowning accident and a hidden heart condition had stolen him away. Tessa's eyes softened. "I'm sorry. I still sign sometimes," Logan admitted, his throat tightening. "Conversations with someone who never answers." She nodded slowly. "I do the same. Full conversations with my father. Arguments where I finally say what I need. Jokes no one laughs at. Dreams no one hears. This," she gestured between them, hands trembling again, "this is the most real conversation I've had in months." Logan wanted to say more, but just then his client stormed in, an impatient man in a sharp suit, already irritated. Logan looked at him, then at Tessa, and made his decision. He intercepted the man halfway. "Family emergency," he said aloud. "We'll have to reschedule." The man fumed. Logan didn't care. He went back to Tessa. Her eyes were wide with disbelief. "You just walked away from your client. Will survive?" Logan signed, settling into his seat. "Now tell me, why are you really spending your birthday alone?" That question opened a door Tessa hadn't touched in years. She explained. Her father was in Tokyo on business. The cake had been arranged by his secretary. This cafe wasn't her place. It was his. She was there because that was the closest he could come to being with her. "Do you know what's funny?" She signed bitterly. "My father built an empire on communication, and he's never learned mine." Logan thought of Oliver, how even their parents, overwhelmed as they were, had at least tried. "Maybe he's afraid," Logan suggested. "Of what? Of not being good enough. Of failing you more than he already thinks he has." For the first time, she looked startled, like the thought had never occurred to her. The conversation shifted. She asked about his son, Asher. Logan confessed that Asher's mother had left when he was 2, unable to handle parenthood. He'd been raising the boy alone ever since. "So you know what it's like," Tessa signed quietly, "being abandoned by someone who was supposed to love you unconditionally." Logan nodded, and then, almost without thinking, he signed. "Would you like to meet him? My son. I could teach him to sign happy birthday." The hope that bloomed on her face was like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. "You do that?" "He's already curious," Logan said. "He caught me signing once and begged me to teach him." Tessa hesitated, then asked, "Tomorrow? Same time?" Logan smiled. "Tomorrow's perfect." For the first time all day, Tessa's smile was real. The next afternoon, the Boulevard Cafe was quieter. The lunchtime rush had thinned, leaving behind only scattered groups of customers and the aroma of roasted beans lingering like a soft promise. Tessa sat at the same table by the tall window, the same golden sunlight spilling across her lap. But this time, she wasn't alone. Her fingers twisted together nervously, her heart racing with an anticipation she hadn't felt in years. And then she saw them. Logan entered with his son beside him, hand in hand. Asher Hayes, all tousled brown hair and wide green eyes, looked around with the curiosity of a boy who found the whole world fascinating. He carried a sketchbook tucked under his arm and a superhero sticker stuck to the back of his shirt. When his gaze landed on Tessa, he whispered something to his father. Logan crouched, answered him quietly, then guided him forward. Tessa held her breath. "Hi," Asher said shyly, his voice small. But before Tessa could panic at the sound she couldn't hear, his little hands lifted, and he signed, clumsy but unmistakable. "Happy birthday." Her hands flew to her mouth. The boy grinned, proud of himself, and Logan mouthed the words slowly as he signed alongside him, clear enough that she could read his lips. "Happy birthday, Tessa." Tears spilled before she could stop them. Not because the words were perfect. They weren't. Asher's movements were jerky, uncertain, sometimes backwards. But the effort, that was worth more than every necklace her father had ever draped around her neck. She signed back, laughing through her tears. "Thank you, Asher. You are wonderful." The boy turned to his father. "She said I'm wonderful." Logan chuckled, relaying it with his hands. Tessa nodded eagerly. And just like that, a table once haunted by silence filled with the clumsy, joyful language of three people who wanted to understand one another. The hours slipped away. They taught Asher the signs for colors, animals, and names. Tessa sketched pictures on napkins while he drew superheroes with capes larger than their bodies. Logan mostly watched, his chest heavy with something he hadn't expected to feel again. Belonging. At one point, Asher tugged at Tessa's sleeve. "Want to see my drawings?" He signed, his fingers still uncertain. She leaned down, patient, watching his hands like they were the most important thing in the world. "Yes, show me." The boy proudly flipped open his sketchbook. Robots, rockets, and knights filled the pages. In the corner of one, a stick figure man held the hand of a smaller stick figure boy. "That's me and Dad," Asher explained. Logan ruffled his son's hair, embarrassed but touched. "He thinks I'm a superhero," he said softly. Tessa's gaze lingered on the drawing. "He's not wrong," she signed. For a moment, Logan couldn't breathe. Days turned into weeks. The meetings at the cafe became routine, first once a week, then twice, then nearly every afternoon. Tessa taught Asher sign for animals and food. He taught her how to draw dragons and insisted she take home his best ones. Logan and Tessa, between laughter and quiet conversations, stitched together a friendship that began to look suspiciously like something more. But shadows lingered. Tessa still lived in the cavernous mansion her father had built, alone but for servants who tiptoed around her silence. Every night, she returned from warmth to emptiness. And every morning, she carried the ache of knowing her father had yet to notice her absence, her happiness, her hurt. Until one night, the ache became too much. She gathered her courage and sent him a message, not in text, not in email, but in a video. In clear, deliberate sign language, she said, "You've given me diamonds, houses, and cars, but you've never given me you. Learn my language or lose me completely." She pressed send with trembling hands. Grayson Caraway did not reply. Not that night, not the next. Tessa told Logan nothing, but he saw it in her shoulders, in the way her signs slowed and her smiles faltered. He wanted to fix it for her, but some battles could only be fought between parent and child. Then, on a crisp Friday evening, everything changed. The cafe door opened, and in walked Grayson Caraway himself, silver-haired, immaculately dressed, carrying the air of a man who owned every space he entered. Conversations faltered as people recognized him. Tessa froze. Her father spotted her by the window, stiffened at the sight of Logan and Asher beside her, and approached with the slow, deliberate steps of a man walking into unfamiliar territory. "Tessa," he said aloud. His voice was smooth, commanding. She lifted her chin but didn't respond. Her silence was intentional, sharp as glass. Grayson hesitated. Then, awkwardly, he raised his hands. The movements were halting, rough, as though he had practiced them alone 1,000 times and never dared to use them. "Happy birthday, Tessa." It wasn't perfect, not even close, but it was in her language. Her breath caught. Tears blurred her vision. Slowly, she signed back, "You learned." "I'm still learning," he admitted, his voice breaking. His hand stumbled to the signs, messy but real. "Don't give up on me yet. I want to try." Logan reached for Asher's shoulder, pulling the boy close. They watched as silence, long, aching silence, was finally bridged not by diamonds, not by business deals, but by hands trembling with love. Weeks later, Tessa no longer celebrated birthdays alone. Her father practiced with her daily, clumsy but improving. Logan and Asher became constants in her world. And in that cafe by the tall window, where once she had signed to no one, she now signed to people who answered back. Because sometimes family is found, sometimes it is rebuilt, and sometimes, if you're brave enough to demand it, it learns the language of your heart. And on that note, Tessa finally blew out the candle on her birthday cake, not with a whispered wish no one could hear, but with laughter and hands in motion all around her,